We are just on time, ready to start. My name is Eitan Videvich. I'm the Executive Director of the Bird Foundation, and I'm here for the introduction to our Fiscal and Technical Reporting Seminar, which we give to grantees twice a year after every bird cycle. And thanks for joining, and hope you have a fruitful and seminar. We think this is very important for you and us. So this is the agenda. I will start with a short introduction of the Bird Foundation and the team. And then Ms. Natalie Galperin, the Bird CFO, will present some details on the Cooperation and Project Funding Agreement Cpfa process. Then Mr. Omer Carmel, Director of Business Development, will present the technical reporting. And finally, Natalie will come back to discuss the fiscal reporting. Q&A at the end, but if you wish, you can use the Q&A of by writing, and we will try to respond in real time if possible. But mostly Q&A, you can keep it to the end, and we may have some oral Q&A at the end if we have time. And please note that we are recording, and the recording will be posted on our website after the seminar. So let me start with a short introduction on the Bird Foundation. You are all supposed to know this, but maybe some of you are here to learn about how to report and did not have the chance to be exposed to what the Bird Foundation is. I'm not going to give a full presentation, but only a short introduction. So BIRD, as you know, is an acronym by National and Industrial Research and Development Foundation. It's an organization that was established 44 years ago, and its mission is to stimulate and promote a joint R&D between Israeli and American companies for mutual benefit. Those two words are probably the most important words in this slide. We have funding that comes from both countries. It's an endowment that was deposited some time ago, and this provides quite robust and steady funding that allows the foundation to fund projects every 6 months. And so this is the main source of funding. There are other sources of funding for other programs like Bird Energy. And the Board of Governors, this is the Board of Directors of the foundation. It was this team, these people are the ones that selected the projects, your projects. There are 6 members to the Board of Governors, 3 Israelis and 3 Americans. These are senior officials. In Israel is the Chief Scientist of the Ministry of Economy, today Dr. Ami Appelbaum, Director General of the Ministry of Economy, and the Director General of the Ministry of Finance. In the US side, we have people that are from similar departments, ministries, Department of Commerce, the Assistant Secretary at the Department of State, and Assistant Secretary at the Department of Treasury. In some cases, these people appoint designees to be part of the Board of Governors. So, of course, the senior officials are not technical people. They make the decisions, but they get inputs from technical reviewers to make the decisions, and of course from the BIRD team. And this is the Board of Governors and the Board of Directors that oversights the foundation. Now we can say congratulations to 9 projects that were selected in our last cycle, in December 2021. You can see here 4 of these projects in this slide. I'm sure you recognize yourself. And then the other 5 projects are in this slide. 9 projects for the second cycle. So every 6 months there is a cycle, and every 6 months approximately 8 to 9 projects are selected. Also in this session, we have people from the Bird Energy selected companies, 5 projects that was, 6 projects that were selected in November 2021, announced in December 2021. And as you can see here in this slide, we have the logos of the Department of Energy, DOE, the Ministry of Energy, and the Israel Innovation Authority, because this program is funded separately by the stakeholders of these departments and ministries. So let me again congratulate all of you for winning the awards. These are competitive processes, and it's not trivial to be in this list. And we are very happy to have you join the Bird family. Now, it's very important for you to be acquainted with the Bird staff, because some of these people will be in close contact with you or have been in close contact with you. Let me start by what we call PBC, the primary Bird contact. For each one of your projects, there's a PBC, a primary Bird contact. I will show the list in a minute. I myself am a PBC as well, and you have Limor Nakar Vincent, PBC, Deputy Executive Director of Business Development and Bird Energy, Tal Kelem, Director of Business Development, PBC, and Omer Carmel, Director of Business Development. Omer will be presenting the technical reporting here. On the financial side, we have Nathalie Galperin, the CFO, and Oriane Amoyal, the finance manager. With Oriane, you will have a close contact after every fiscal report. And we have Chava Duhan, that you've been in close contact with her for sure. Chava has been in touch with you since before the award, and of course now. And Ma Wakile, she's the information system manager. If you need any help with the upload system or other information related to our IT systems, Ma can help. We have also a team in the US, Maya Vardi Shoshani in the West Coast, Andrea Yona in the East Coast, in New Jersey, and we have also in Texas, Shiri Freund-Koren. And of course, the US team can also be helpful if you need a point of contact. But during the project, the main people to be in touch with are the PBC and the finance team. Okay, so before we start, I want to show you who is the PBC for each one of your projects. I'm not going to read the slides. You can take a good look. You can see the names of the PBC for each project. This is for the Bird projects, and this is for the Bird Energy project. I'm sure you've been in touch with this one of us, because before the submission, we were of course the PBCs as well. Okay, so we are ready to continue, and the first topic after my introduction is details on the process of signing the Cpfa Cooperation on Project Funding Agreement. Nathalie, please, the stage is yours. Okay. 1 second. Nathalie?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start again in case. I wasn't heard. Okay. So I'd like to discuss several topics towards signing the Cpfa agreement. Then I'll be addressing certain annexes, Annex B, which presents the triggers for payments. Annex E, which is the schedule of milestones and deliverables. Then I'll introduce the report's submission requirements and the general terms for repayment. By now, you've received a letter from us that addresses all those bullet items that I'll be discussing. Those are the things that you need to complete and update towards the Cpfa. One of the items are the budgets. In the proposal stage, you've together the two participants submitted their budgets that not necessarily reflect the grant. The budget for the Cpfa purpose should be adjusted to be exactly twice the awarded grant. That means usually that the companies need to scale down the budget. We suggest and expect that the scale down will be in the same proportion as in the original proposal. The scaling downs mean that you should either present partial expenses or just remove certain budget items from the budget. Yet you should be aware that all tasks and things and the milestones that you committed to should still be performed. It doesn't mean that you do less work, but you just can't request funding for the full budget, but only twice the awarded grant. The program plan should be adjusted to start on the what we call effective date. Effective date is for the purpose of this project, is the commencement, the beginning of the project. In the proposal, you didn't need to decide on the effective date, but now that you are awarded, you should choose this date. It can even date back as far back as the proposal date, but you should be aware that the Cpfa signing process may take several months. So the date shouldn't be sooner than 3 months prior to signing date. So you can decide on it a bit later on down the line, or if you see that you are advanced with the process of signing Cpfa, it can be quite now or even a month back. Also, the meaning of the effective date is that this is the first date from which you can report expenses. So in this respect, you should choose a meaningful date in a sense that you start accumulating enough expenses to be reported in the first segment. If you don't have any expenditures yet and you don't perform many tasks, maybe you should postpone the effective date to a more meaningful date. You are also asked to submit certain missing additional details. Here we mean contact people, bank details, and other details that go into the Cpfa. We are the one that will be compiling together all information into the final agreement. So just keep sending it to us, actually to Chava, to Ms. Chava, through email. You don't need to input this information into the Cpfa itself, but through email communication is fine. Company-to-company agreement. This agreement is the understanding and all arrangements between the two companies. Here the companies should discuss the future of their commercial terms, the IP arrangements, who will be performing the work. I mean, it is very individual. We don't have a template to this agreement. And in fact, we see that each partnership, they have totally different agreement. Some companies go into very deep and very many details in those company-to-company agreements. Other companies reach a general outline, and later on they may proceed into a more advanced agreement. It is up to you how many details you would like to discuss here. We would also expect to see here that you address the Cpfa in a sense that you bring about a section that informs and mentions that there is a CPFA in the background, and it is oversees any other arrangement. Specifically, some companies reach a different repayment agreement between themselves than discussed in the CPFA. It is okay by us that you reach a different arrangement, but you should acknowledge that in case the repayments do not adhere to the CPFA commitment, you are both liable according to the CPFA. We also request a financial status analysis. This is relevant to private companies. We won't be asking for financial status analysis from public companies. Private companies should provide this questionnaire. The purpose of it is to see that you have enough financing to meet the matching funds for the next 2 years. Also, private companies should submit current financial statements. We're often asked by US companies whether those statements should be audited or just enough to have reviewed or compiled statements. So you don't need to audit the statements for our purposes. It is enough to have compiled statements. We may be asking for additional substantiating information following the review of your financial questionnaire. So once we have all those things in place, we will be preparing a full CPFA with all annexes, and we'll be sending it to the companies. Our practice now is to send the soft copies, and we're okay with receiving a soft copy, but we will be asking to receive the signature page, signed an original, signed the signatures page, or at least by fax, or preferably by hard copy. So the effective date, I just described it, but you'll be able to see it in section P of the CPFA agreement. That is this wording is taken from the CPFA. You'll see that the effective date is the first day of for a particular month that you decide on. And the project duration will be as approved. Usually it is 24 months, but it can be a different duration. So the duration will be starting on the effective date. Termination of product development. This term appears only in certain CPFAs, what we call milestone CPFA. We used to call it pharma, but this is the current terminology. Upon termination of product development, there are certain repayment requirements. I'll address it shortly. In most CPFAs, you won't find this term. There's also the signing date. That is the date that we sign the CPFA, but it doesn't have any meaning or any reference throughout the CPFA. It is just for formality only. Here you see an extract from Annex B. Annex B, that's the annex of payments. That is the structure, a general structure of the Annex B. You'll see that the first payment will be performed just a few days after signing the CPFA. Here you'll see specific amounts, the Israeli company and the US company. It is usually in the 15 to 20% range out of the total grant of each company. Then the second payment and each additional payment occurs upon reaching the specific trigger, what we call required expenditure. After 6 months, each company will be submitting a report, that presents the fiscal and technical status for the segment. If after reviewing the expenses, you've reached the required expenditure, the payment that will be due will be according to Annex B. We're often asked whether the payment is 50% of the reported expenditure. So it's not 50%, it is the specific amount that is written in Annex B. Altogether, by the end of the project, you will reach 50% of your grant if all conditions are met. The conditions will be discussed in the fiscal section. And then there's a final payment. You'll see in the Cpfa that there is no dollar figure there, because that is the complementary payment that closes the entire grant amount. So we can't acknowledge ahead of time what will be the final payment, since there are certain qualifications that you may not reach the full amount of the award. If you meet all the requirements, the final payment will exactly match and total the full grant. Then there is Annex E. Annex E, what we call Schedule of Project Milestones and Deliverables. Here, the Annex E, you can extract it from your proposal, which was presented. The Annex E should describe the milestones and deliverables of the project. At this stage, you should adjust it, since there has been several months since you've submitted the proposal. You should adjust it and update it to reflect the current position of the project. That means that perhaps you made some revisions to your initial plans, perhaps some time schedules changed. So now is the time to make revisions. We will be reviewing the current Schedule E. In addition, you will be requested to submit a Gantt chart with all tasks of the project. The Gantt chart should commence on the effective date, and it should last through the duration of the project. Regarding reports submission, you'll see it in the Cpfa under Section D. A full set of reports consists of one fiscal report from each company and a joint technical report. Each fiscal report should be signed by the company that submits it, and the joint technical report should be signed by both companies. The reports should be submitted within 30 days from the termination of the segment. A segment is 6 months, so you have another 30 days to submit the reports. The reports submission should be through the upload system, which you are familiar with since you've uploaded your proposal. And then you should also send us a hard copy. A hard copy seems perhaps some outdated request, but we do require it, and we need hard copies in order to conduct the review process. If we have an incomplete submission, meaning that either report is not submitted or we haven't received the hard copy yet, we will delay and we will wait with the review until the full set is submitted. Here I'd like to present just general terms for repayments. You'll see in the Cpfa agreement in Section B, which is a very lengthy section because there are many things to be aware of when you discuss repayments. But generally speaking, BIRD is the grant is conditional. It is conditional upon sales. So the common terms for making repayments are reaching sales. And then you should be making repayments at 5% from gross sales of the technology and products developed in the project. There are other occasions where repayments are due. Those occasions are outright sale of the product, transfer of control, and IPO. In such cases, the repayment may reach up to 50% of the transaction and up to a full repayment. Full repayment, that is the maximum obligation that may be due to BIRD. That is 150% of the grant. It is reached, you'll see in Annex B, there is an escalation table. After 5 years, you reach the maximum of 150%. The amount itself is adjusted to CPI index in the US. After that, the repayment is, the full repayment amount is fixed. The obligations is only tentative, only if you have enough sales to fulfill this obligation. You'll see here also licensing agreement. This is not a common way that we meet repayments, but there's then a repayment is of 30%. As I mentioned, there are certain CPFA agreements which we call milestone projects. In those agreements, if you reach what we call conclusion of product development, it will be defined in the CPFA, then a full repayment is due, a full amount according to those terms of full repayment.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. Can you stop sharing?
Yes.
And before we start, we continue with Omer to the technical reporting. Let me point out that also we have representatives from the Bird HLS program as well. Thanks for joining. Congratulations to you as well. 2 projects that were selected last August 2020, and they join us in this session as well. So congratulations to the Bird HLS awardees as well. Omer, please, technical reporting. You're muted. You have to unmute. You have to unmute.
Okay. Hi everyone. Just a second. Let me upload the presentation. Okay. Okay, so I'll review the, my name is Omer Kamel. I'll review the technical reporting with you. Okay, the objectives of it is really obvious, to monitor the project progress, but as a matter of fact, there's much more than that. Keep in mind, we get a glimpse of your project once every 6 months in most cases. So the idea is actually to create full transparency and put us all on the same page. And being in sync with you allows us to assist you in making better decisions during your project. A few examples of such cases. The most common one maybe is the situation where we identify maybe that you need some additional time to complete your project, and in that case, we could advise you to consider asking for a project extension. Another example could be identifying that you're not utilizing your funding in an optimal way. So again, we could consider suggesting you to make some revision to your project plan. So to conclude, remember that we do want you to succeed in your project, and we'll assist you the most if you'll keep us updated on the project status, regardless of what's going on in the project. Each project is divided into segments, usually of 6 months, and this is defined in the CPFA, as Natalie mentioned. And by the end of each segment, we expect to get both the technical and the fiscal report. Technical is jointly submitted and signed, and each company sends its fiscal report. And there is, as Natalie already mentioned, there's a soft copy and the hard copy. The soft copy is sent to us using the upload system to our website, and the hard copy is sent by courier to our offices. Make sure to have the same period dates on both the technical and fiscal reports. And your PBC and the finance team will review these reports, and if there will be some outstanding questions or open issues, we will ask you to have some e-meeting and try to resolve the open issues or open questions. Remember that the approval of the reports by us, by Bird, is actually a prerequisite for the continued funding of your project. So you don't want to have delays in that regard. The final report, you'll have 60 days following the project completion to send them to us, and you have 30 days following the segment report that should be sent to us. This is some kind of a visualization of a fictitious project. Always start with the effective date, and in this example, you have an 18-month project. So we expect to receive the first interim report by month 7, and the second one by month 13, and the final report by month 20. Before we dive into the details of the reports, some general requests, guidelines. First of all, you have a full booklet describing how to construct these reports, and you can see it on your screen. It can be found on our website. So any question you may have, you'll find probably the answer within this booklet. And in addition to that, the reports are constructed with template, and these templates actually describe and give full instructions for each and every section which you should provide. So just follow the instruction, it's very easy. Try to keep the reports simple. If you're using some fancy words, abbreviation or acronyms, kindly provide some glossary terms. Keep in mind that each and every one of us is dealing with more than one project, so keep the report simple. If we'll find the reports difficult to understand, there will be some missing information, the chapters would not be according to the templates, everything may lead to delays, and you don't want to have such delays, as I've already mentioned. Where could you find the reporting documents? So you go to our website, you choose the guidelines and form the drop-down list, and you choose the procedure submission. This leads you to this window where you'll need to press this link, reporting procedure and forms. And you'll see this window divided to 3 parts or subsections. The first one is the reporting guidelines. This is the booklet I've mentioned. This section is a section dealing with the interim report. So the first link is the technical report template. It's a Word document, and beneath it, it's the fiscal report template. And for the final report, you have 3 links. The first one is the technical report has 2 parts. So this is part 1, which is a Word document, and part 2, which is an Excel document, and the fiscal report for the final report. So regarding the reports, let's review how the templates are constructed. So the first page is this actually the last page you'll deal with before sending the report to us. So just make sure everything is filled, and specifically the bird reference number, the segment you are reporting, the dates the segment covers, and make sure to have signatures of both companies, both the project manager's signatures and also the authorized company official. And make sure to have the submission date also in this cover page. So you'll find first the table of contents, which you can update by right click on it after finishing filling in the details of the report. Section 2, 3, and 4 deals with the actual project status and how it actually compares with the original project plan. Section 2 deals with the objectives, and we want to see, we ask you to mention both the project objective and also the objective of the specific segment you are reporting, and how this compares with the original plan. Oops, just a second. Now, section 3 is the summary of the accomplishment, and I call it this is actually the story of the segment. It's one of the major parts of the report. It's a free text section, and effectively it's a summary of all the method and all the work you've been doing during this segment. You can add diagrams, images, or any other demonstration means which will help us understand what you have done and achieved during this segment, and would like to know also how this compares with the objectives of this segment. In section 4, we'd like to understand the actual results of this segment, and again, how they compare with the original plan. And we provide in this section 4 two types of tables. The first one deals with the tasks, and the second one deals with the milestone and the deliverables. Regarding the task table, we want you to mention the task number based on the same number you used in the original project plan, and use the same task name as you have in the original project plan, and provide details about what you have achieved, what's the status of this task, and what is the percentage of completion. Regarding the milestone and the deliverables, again, what have been achieved, if some of the milestone or deliverables were not achieved during the segment. So again, we want to we ask you to mention it, and we would like to understand how this may affect the project, and also the timeline and the deliverables, and also what were the reasons for the delays. Section 5 deals with the next project segment, and you'll find pretty much the same tables as you've seen in section 4, but dealing with the objectives and tasks for the next segment. This is the place where you can ask yourself whether you are behind schedule or not, and maybe whether you need to reschedule some of the tasks and the activities, and realize whether they have any impact on the project timeline and project deliverables. And if you find it appropriate, you can ask for discuss with your PBC and ask for a project termination extension date. You have up to 3 months before the project conclusion to ask this extension. Section 6 deals with the project plan dynamics, and actually we would like to see the update of the Gantt chart and how it evolves in the last segment. You can use any software package, Excel, Project Microsoft, or any other to present it, and this is how it looks like. Essentially, it's the original project plan, but we'd like to see, you know, if there were any task rescheduling, and what was the percentage of completeness of each and every task. Section 7. In section 7, we would like to know and understand how was the cooperation and coordination between the partners during this segment. Based on our experience, one of the key ingredients for a successful BERT project is a good cooperation and communication. So this is very important, and we do recommend you to build with your partners some mechanism that will ensure good level of communication between you two. This could include monthly or weekly calls, some communication metrics, and some agreed upon ways to resolve challenges and conflicts if they arise. In section 8, we ask you to revisit the risk analysis and identify if you maybe identified some new risk factors, or maybe the severity of some risk have changed, and understand whether these could affect and influence the project deliverables. And if that's the case, we want you to highlight and explain these changes. Again, if something changes, we ask you to provide an updated risk analysis table. Section 9 and 10. Section 9 deals with the market and commercialization plan. We would like to know if you identified any changes in the market which may affect the project or your forecast, your sale forecast. And provide some details about it. And in section 10, we ask you to mention if there were any publications during this segment. And this could include articles or maybe patents or any press releases. And you can add the links or the images related to this publication, either in this section or in the appendices. Basically, for the appendices, you can add any relevant material that provides some meaningful insights beyond what have been already described in the previous sections. And you are free to add any material which is meaningful to understand the status of your project. So this actually concludes the interim report, and I'll continue with the final technical report, which is quite similar to the interim report, except few changes. The first change is you have actually two parts for this report. The first part is the Word document, and the second part is the Excel document. We've seen that previously on the link in previous slides, one of the previous slides. The part one, the Word document, is almost the same. We excluded the section 5, which deals with the plans for the next segment report. And we added a few additional sections. Section 9 now deals with the future activities. This means the activities following the project completion. And it deals both with the R&D activities and also the marketing activities. We do want to understand what your plans beyond this project, and how you intend to continue your efforts, both related to the development efforts and also related to the marketing efforts. And this regardless whether you are going to make them jointly or separately, meaning each company by itself. Section 11 and Section 12 deals with the market forecast and the summary of the market size, and they are both related to the repayment for repayment for BERT. In the appendix, we ask you to provide some presentation of the project, which is a summary of the whole project, and I'll elaborate on it later in later slide. So I'll elaborate now a little bit about section 11 and 12, as they are different from what you'll find in the interim report. So section 11 is the updated market forecast, and you are asked in this section to identify up to 2 market segments and up to 2 products that are relevant to your project deliverables. So there could be up to 4 such combination, of course, and you should fill in the details of only the valid combination, only the combination which are valid for your project. For example, suppose you develop some software for remote patient monitoring, as an example, and It could be applied to both elderly patients and also could be applied to, let's say, mental health patients. So in this example, you have one product and you have two market segments. So in this example, you'll have to provide more details about these two combinations. And this combination should represent the full market potential of your project deliverables. In section 12, you'll be asked to provide the summary of the market size and the sale forecast related to the deliverables you have identified in section 11. And in order to fill in this table, we provide actually the Excel file, which is the final technical report part 2. And I'll open it now, and I'll show you how to use it. So just a second. Stop sharing. New share. Okay, can you see the Excel file?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is the Excel file, the part 2 final report. As you can see, it has many worksheets. The first one is the instruction. You are more than welcome to read it. It provides all the explanation about how to fill in this file. There is a cover page, which resemble pretty much to the same cover page you'll find in the part 1 report. And the next thing is to go to the part 2 summary. You have to fill in the project reference number. By the way, you can fill in only the yellow marked cells, the yellow, yes. So you fill in the bird reference number, the US company name, the Israeli company name, the project title. I've prepared it already for you in this example, and the calendar year where the project termination year, the calendar year of when your project actually concluded. And if I refer to the example I've given previously, so you have, in our example, you have product 1, let's call it P, and market A, and market B. So you have two combinations. You have combination 1A and combination 1B, which you'll need to fill. And therefore, you should go to, in this example, to product 1A and product 1B, and I'll give an example with product 1A. So the only thing you need to put here is the market size. This is in million per year. So let's suppose it's 200. The annual growth rate for this market, let's suppose it's 5% each year. And this table provides a forecast for the next 3 years following the project completion. We ask you to provide the original forecast of sales you have provided in the original project proposal. And this is, by the way, in multiples of thousands. So let's suppose it's 200,000 and 210, 220, let's say 230. And the table below deals with the current forecast, meaning the forecast following the project completion. And it might differ from what you have expected when you send the project proposal. But let's suppose it's the same. So just fill in the figures again. And the revenue basis for repayment is always 5%. So the Excel calculates everything, and now the only thing you need to do is to fill in also the same details for product 1B, and you go back to part 2 summary worksheet, and you have all the tables ready for you. So the only thing you need to do now is just copy and paste them to section 12 of which you've seen in the Word document. So let me go back. I think that's the one. Yeah. Can you see again the?
Yes.
Okay. What is my? Oh. Okay. So and you see in section 12 you just need to copy and paste the tables which were prepared in with the Excel file. Again, this is the place where you'll find the Excel file. This is part 2. And now let's say a few words about the appendix, which is where we ask you to provide the project summary presentation. These are the subject we would like to see in this summary. Overview, accomplishment and objectives, the task and schedule, the milestone and deliverables, and the results, and the plan for future cooperation between the company, and how you're going to sail, and what are your sale forecasts. Again, this is based on section 12, which we've just discussed. So you're using the upload system, which you're already familiar with. You go to this link and you use the upload birdf.com. You put in, you log in with the username and passwords, and choose the right project, and there you'll be able to upload both the technical, fiscal of the Israeli and fiscal of the US, and so forth. And again, I remind you that the hard copy should be sent to our office in Tel Aviv. So briefly, let's review some frequently asked questions. What happens if the actual progress is slower than the program plan? You submit everything as scheduled. Suppose the spending is less than the forecast. Again, you submit as usual. What happens if the actual spending is greater than the forecast and the project plan? We do recommend you in that case to consult with your PBC and with your with our finance team. As Natalie already mentioned, you should not send only one report. We always start evaluating the project after we receive both the fiscal and the technical report. If the project scope has changed, again, this should be done in consultation with us, with your PBC and the finance team, to see how to make some adjustment to your project plan. If more time is needed, again, you should advise your PBC and submit an official request signed by both company to make this change and adjustment. If you complete your project ahead of time, this is great. Just complete everything and send the reports to us. And that's it. I think, Natalie, I should.
Thank you, Omer. Thank you, Omer. Let me add a couple of words. So maybe you can share the presentation. Thank you very much. Now we're going to the fiscal reporting. But before I ask Natalie to start, let me point out that you saw and you listened and saw to a lot of details The presentations and the recordings of this fiscal and technical seminar will be uploaded, will be posted on our website. So you have to remember that. You don't have to remember all the details. When it comes to the final technical report and specifically the updated marketing forecast, Excel and everything. And of course, we are here always to answer questions at the end if necessary. So Natalie, the stage is yours. Have to unmute yourself, Natalie. Natalie, I think you're muted.
Okay. So now I'll be discussing the fiscal reporting section. There are several topics here to discuss: the structure of and the content of the fiscal reports, require documentation for fiscal audits, which will occur at the end of the project. What happens when there is a variation from the originally planned and approved budget, and the commercialization reports. Okay, so the fiscal report has several sections. It has 1 to 10 sections. Those are the topics that each report has. It has a cover page, direct labor, equipment, material and supplies, travel, subcontractors, consultants, and other expenses. You've seen all those sections in the proposal phase as well, when you submitted the proposed budget. The cover page has this template. You'll see the reference number, that is our 4-digit number, which you've seen at the beginning of the presentation, project title, then under company name, each company, whether it's the Israeli company or the US, each company should provide its own name so we can identify it. Type of report. All reports are interim except for the last report, which is the final report. The segment period. Those are the 6-month segments. They always start on the first day of a certain month until the last day, those are of the 6-month period. It should be round figures, exactly 6 months or the applicable segment. Project start date, that is the effective date, and the ones it's the same date throughout the project. It doesn't change, it changes from report to report. Then you see the next page, you'll see that it is all white. That means that it gets populated from the following sheets. So just to see, you'll on the left side, you'll see the cumulative actual. All reports are being presented in a cumulative manner. That means that from one segment to another, the expenses add up. And the total approved budget, that is the total budget which you can take and you should copy from Annex A. It's not the budget for one segment, but the entire budget for the project of that particular company. You'll see also at the bottom 3 yellow cells, the budget for current reporting segment. That is an estimate. You can take it from the budget, the approved budget. There is a table at the bottom which presents each segment and the percentage of this segment out of the total budget. So here you should fill out the specific budget for the segment and the estimation for the next segment. The updated estimate is your current evaluation of the total budget. Those cells are mostly used for your reference. We're not linking it to any other information in the report, but here you can see what you are planning for the current segment and what are the current estimation of the budget. And if you see that you are off significantly, whether below budget or above, you should check and see what is the reason for that. This way, it is a good practice to be active in managing your budget and your planned expenses. So first of all, you don't end up spending too much, or at least more than you planned. And on the other hand, you don't end up being underspent at the end of the project. This is one example of not utilizing the entire grant if you end up not spending enough or not fully spending the planned budget. Then at the bottom, you'll see the signature page. Here you'll see 3 company officials, whereas in the technical report, there were only 2 people. Here, there's also an accounting official. In each organization, the officials are different, depending on the size of the organization, the number of people, but appropriate people should be signing this report. So starting with the direct labor, you'll see here name of employee. So you'll be presenting here all employees that work in the reported segment. The profession. It is very important for us to see the profession on the project. Since throughout the project, people may change in the project, but we'll be looking for the same professions as well in the approved budget. Each employee, each new employee should be reported in a new line, not even if an employee replaces another employee with the same profession, it should be a separate line item. And you should find a profession that was presented in the budget. Month on the project, that means that in a 6-month segment, the most that can be reported is 6 months for an employee. If there was a month in which an employee didn't work at all, not even 1 hour, it shouldn't be counted. So in such case, for example, an employee would be reported as 5 months out of a 6-month segment. And then in the next column, that is the percentage on project. Here you should check the percentage in each month in which the employee worked and average out those percentages. So if in the previous example, if there was a month in which an employee didn't work, you don't need to use this 0% in the average, but just use the month in which the employee did work. Gross salary. The salary should be for this particular segment, those particular months, multiplied by the percentage on the project. In this column, once you examine our Excel sheet, you see that there are no formulas here. It is just a plain typing table. So a good practice is to keep a table aside from this Excel sheet and have all those multiplications performed on the side. So for example, an employee that worked 50% in 5 months, you should take 5 months salary, multiply by 50%, and type in the number under gross salary during month worked. And the same practice you should use for the social benefits column. These 2 columns together will add up to the white column, which is called total charge to project. One of the guidelines that we have for our bird projects are the salary caps. In Israel, the salary cap for a full-time employee that works for a full year is 125,000. From this number, you should calculate the maximum allowable salary. So for a 6-month report, the most you can report is a 62,500. That is the cap for a 6-month reporting segment. In the US, the cap is 175,000 per year for a full-time employee. Starting from the second segment, you should type in here the total previously reported. This column should always be copied from your previous segment report. So once you have those two columns filled out, you'll have the cumulative to date. And as you recall, if we'll go back to this page, that's how we get this cumulative by actual column on the left side. That's how it gets populated from those cumulative to date columns. The approved contract budget, that's from Annex A, as we mentioned. Those are the full budget for the entire project. So you should type it in once, and you can use this data throughout the project. You'll see at the bottom, after total expenditure, there's a line that is 25% overhead. This is a general overhead, which we allow for general staff. That means secretarial, legal, finance people, executives, all those people that should not be reported under direct labor in the yellow cells. In the yellow cells, you should have only direct people such as R&D people, technical support, marketing, things that are directly related and not general practices, even though those general people also support the project. So together, you don't need also to substantiate those 25% overhead. It is a general allowance, and we'll not be asking for any documentation to support this expense. So here, the things that I've described, they're all written here. You can use it for later future reference. Next budget item is equipment. Equipment is accepted and reported on a depreciation basis. So here you should have a description of the piece of equipment, date of purchase, purchase price, that's the full purchase price, percentage on project. For example, if you have computers which you purchase, but you use them for other purposes as well, you should make your own judgment what is the right percentage that should be applied here. Same practice for number of months used. Usually it is relevant for the first segment in which you purchase an equipment. Usually it is not purchased on the first day of the segment, so you should take the relevant portion of the segment. Also for equipment, you should be aware that that's the only exception, that you can report equipment that was purchased before effective date. Since it is on depreciation basis, we do recognize that you may be using some equipment which you already have in your organization. And we can even allow it on economical basis, meaning that the equipment that was already fully depreciated in the accounting records can still be reported here to some extent. Here again, the judgment of a percentage on project should be reasonable. If you already used it in previous periods, it will not be 100%, and then it should be some reasonable percentage. So for a new piece of equipment, the common practice is a straight line 3 years depreciation. But since the accounting people here, you should know that if you use a different practice for specific type of equipment, that's the practice that you should be using. So the same, the other columns is the same logic as salary, totally charged to project, previously reported, and the budget. Also for a small piece of equipment, you can collectively use one budget item for several pieces of equipment which are similar. And then you'll see later on that we have supporting schedules. That's where you should detail things such as equipment and other budget items at an invoice level. I'll show you those schedules shortly. You can also report lease equipment. Those should be reported on a monthly lease costs, and the same practice, percentage on a project and month used. For equipment and other budget items, I'll mention it here. You should keep invoices and the proof of payment. We don't need it for the interim reports. You don't need to submit it to us when you submit the reports, but when we will be auditing the company, the project, we will be asking to see those invoices and the proof of payment. So it is a good practice from what we know that companies already put aside those invoices, photocopies of those invoices and the proof of payment, and later on it will be easy for them to compile and audit the file. Next items are travel expenses. You can, here you see a table of foreign travel. We allow mostly travel in and from Israel and US, but we also allow certain travel to other destinations, mostly for marketing purposes. If you have some conventions, exhibits, anything that advances the commercial aspect of the project, we allow those budget items as well. We usually allow it only to a certain extent, not at a too high of an expense. So here you should be presenting the dates of travel. If you also, during that specific travel, had other meetings, you should allocate the specific days. For example, 2 days out of 5 days should be attributed to bird if you also did other meetings and other purposes for this travel. Here you should also have a record of the employee that made the trip, dates of destination, description and purpose of the trip, and you can report the general accepted expenses such as air ticket, hotels, car rental, the things that usually you have in your organization and you reimburse employees. We also allow those expenses. Other budget items are materials and supplies. Here again in the budget sheet, you can have collective line items. Means that if you have lab materials, you can have one line item, and in a schedule, you should explain and detail and break it down to an invoice level. Here you can collect those items. That's why the table is quite short. I mean, we can have a few more lines, but it is not necessary since the major items are enough to be presented here. We also allow subcontractors, again in Israel and in US. In other countries, it is a very extreme and uncommon exemption. We will, I mean, if you specifically ask for it, we will consider, but you shouldn't use it as a common practice. The subcontractors should be in Israel and in the US. You were asked to also detail the performed service of that subcontractor. And the documentation is similar to other budget items. We also have consultants, which I didn't present the table. It is the same as subcontractors. Under other budget items, items such as regulatory expenses, marketing expenses, field trials, patent registration, those things can be budgeted and reported. Patent registration is a bit, should be clear that we allow only registration costs, not the legal counsel, not other advisors, only the registration expenses. We have another rule. For one patent, you can report up to 20,000 in one country, and additional 5,000 in another country, and the same practice for a second patent. So altogether, patent items can be budgeted at 50,000. Here there are some examples of the supporting schedules. So this is a supporting schedule for equipment. You take each line item, present it in the title, name of subcategory, and then you detail each supplier at an invoice, each date of invoice, invoice number. That's when those schedules are used when you provide the reports for each segment. This is the schedule for materials. So you'll see all schedules are the same. you should always see that the total for each subcategory matches the budget, the line item in the main budget sheet. Now I'd like to discuss variation from budget. It is very common that in a project of 2 or 3 years, the budget is not as you planned at the beginning when you started the project. So per each budget category, up to 15% variation above budget, or of course below budget, you don't need to ask for a budget revision. That means that if you have in one budget item, you exceed the plan by up to 15%, there should be another budget item which you underspent, and we just take it as a deduction from one item against the other one. If you'd like to have a deviation which is higher than 15%, then you should ask for a budget revision. Again, you do need, of course, underspending in another budget item. You should send us a letter from the company. It's not from both companies, but from the company that requests the revision. You should send us a letter explaining the nature of the budget revision. That means that you should explain why you need to change the budget, not just a verbal description that we're overspending on employees, but for example, we didn't hire or we didn't retain the subcontractor that we planned. Instead, we use internal workforce, or we didn't buy materials, but we use a subcontractor to perform the work. That means that we would like to understand what happens in the project, not just the description of the revisions. Then you should send us also the budget itself, the revised budget, those summary 2 pages of the budget presenting the new budget only. And you should be expecting a letter from us, either approving the budget or some communication with us regarding further information, some questions. But the bottom line is that if a budget revision is approved, you will be receiving a letter from us. The budget revision is part of a revision to the Cpfa agreement, and that's how we treat it. If you'd like to allocate tasks between the 2 companies in the project, that means that both companies should be asking for a budget revision, and then it should be a joint letter requesting budget revision with the same description of the nature of the revision. And also each company should submit its own revised budget. A guideline that we have regarding the timeline, the budget revision should be submitted no later than 3 months prior to project termination. We definitely will not allow any budget revision after project termination, and also no budget revision very soon before project termination. I'm again mentioning the good practice of monitoring the project expenses by knowing what is the expenses planned for the next segment. In this way, you'll know ahead of time whether you need budget revision, whether you are underspending in one budget item. So that is also a good reason to ask for budget revision. So just be active and manage your budget. Now you'll see an example of a budget which did require budget revision, but the company didn't send us a budget revision. Again, if there is a budget revision and we allow it, this example is not relevant. So on the left side, you'll see the original budget. We have here direct labor, materials, all those common budget items. And in the center, you'll see the actual reported expenses. So you can see the direct labor, the company was underspent by 50,000. We can recognize here 450,000 spending. Materials, the original budget was 100,000. The company spent 80,000. So again, we can recognize just as much as the company spent. For foreign travel, the budget was 10,000. The spending was 20. So we can allow 15% above budget, since that deviation is allowed without requesting a revision. So 11,500 will be allowed. Subcontractor, the same thing. The budget was 50. The company spent 70,000, so 57.5 will be allowed. For consultants, there was no budget item. So the company spent 45,000. We can't accept any of that expense since there is no budget item and there is no 15% to allow. So it will be accepted as 0. So you'll see that from a company that had a budget of 660,000 and actually spent 665, the company spent more than its budget, we will allow only 599. That is what we call understanding. The budget wasn't fully utilized. In such case, the company will not receive the full grant, even though it did spend enough to be entitled to receive a full grant. So that is an example which is not so uncommon. Be aware of those particular things. If you don't have any budget item and you report certain expenses, do ask for a budget revision. If you highly overspend on a certain budget item, also ask for a budget revision. You can ask several times throughout the project for budget revision. So don't wait for the last segment to ask for all those changes, but you just keep, after one segment, 2 segments, if you see that you're below budget, you can ask for it. You'll see here also another budget line, that's the 5% G&A overhead. That is again, that is an allowance that we allow for general things such as office equipment, general spendings, office overhead. You don't need to have any supporting documents for those 5% of the budget. Now I'm moving on to commercialization reports. Those reports are relevant only after project termination. We'll be approaching you twice a year after H1. Those are calendar segments. After H1 and H2, we'll be sending you a template report and a letter requesting you to report sales of the product and the relevant technology developed in the project. So the report should be submitted within 3 months after the H1, after each half-year conclusion. You should be reporting, that's a template of the report. It is quite straightforward, the period, the project plan, project title. Here you see the summary table. You should report the forecast that was submitted to Bird in your marketing report. Then the total revenue, those are actual sales, which are the basis for repayment, 5% calculated on those sales, and the repayment due, that is the same number in dollars. And the payment should follow the report. The report contains also several questions, and you should address those questions and as part of the report. The report also contains a forecast for the next 6 months periods. That means for the next 2 years. This forecast is used for our cash flow planning, and it is also some indication of where you see your product is going and what do you think will come out of it. You'll see here 2 company officials that should sign the report. That is, again, the same practice that you're already familiar with. So I'd like to conclude the presentation.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you very much. Thank you, Omer.